In today's video, I want to share with you some tips in relation to one of the most important things, one of the most important skills that you can acquire, and you will have to, I believe, no matter what you do in your life, use these skills from time to time. Maybe not too often, but it will depend on your job, and it'll depend on what sort of a career or profession you're in, or whether you're self-employed or not, and what you do for a living. But what I'm referring to is the whole question of being able to negotiate. Being able to negotiate well and successfully is a critical skill, and whether you're negotiating for your first job, or your first car, or your first property, or your first business, or for a pay rise, or even to go out or be allowed out if you're a young person to go to whatever young people do nowadays. The question of being able to negotiate is a very, very important one, and it's a critical skill. So in this video I'm going to try and give you 10 skills or 10 tips, and I've kind of arrived at them. It just happens to be number 10 when I had a look at the note I made. The tips I'm going to give you are derived from experience, and they're derived from a little bit of study as well, a little bit of research. So I don't believe in falling flat on your face and learning that way only. I do believe very, very strongly in researching and in books, and essentially learning from the mistakes of people who went before. It would be perverse and irrational not to take the opportunity to read a lot, which I do, and to learn from the mistakes of other people. So the first key thing you really should do if you're negotiating for anything, and let's just take, for example, buying a house, buying a second-hand house, and you're talking to the auctioneer, or indeed you may even be talking to the vendor or vendors themselves. The first thing you need to do in any negotiation is to do a lot of listening, do a lot of aggressive listening. So to put it at its simplest and its tritest, you've 2 ears and you've 1 mouth. So that's a good gauge or a good guide, in my view, that you should be doing twice as much listening as talking. Because when you listen, you will discover the real motivation for the sale, or you'll find some information which may be of benefit or use to you, but you certainly won't find anything of use or benefit to you if you don't listen. So you do need to listen, and listen very, very carefully and very aggressively. And I know it may seem contradictory to tell you to listen aggressively. You might think that you can't listen aggressively, you can only speak aggressively or do other things aggressively. But in fact, you can listen aggressively if you are switched on and clued in, and if you recognize the value and benefit of listening, and listening carefully to the other party. That leads on to the second tip to do with negotiation, and that is to empathize with the other party. And by empathize, I mean that you will actually understand the other party's position. It's no good going into a negotiation and setting out exactly what it is you want and having no empathy for the other party. You do need to know the difference between empathy and sympathy, but you do need to be prepared to understand the position of the other party in the transaction. So they may have a particular deadline, they may have a particular reason for selling, they may have a particular reason for having a specific price point, they may be under pressure from a bank, but you do need to be aware, you do need to be empathetic. See the birds in the background there at my feeder. So that's the second thing. The third tip I'd have in relation to negotiation is to do with your demeanour and your tone. And I think the best results you're going to get will be from adopting a playful, laid back tone. Not aggressive, but easy to get on with. Even the bumbling amateur tone without overdoing it. You might recall years and years ago, if you're my age you certainly will, the detective Columbo. Columbo always was stumbling around in an old raincoat, asking what appeared to be stupid, innocuous questions. But Columbo was no fool, and he was getting the information that he needed, and there was always one more question. But he adopted the persona of being a bit of a fool and a bit of a bumbler, but he wasn't. So my view is that you should adopt a tone of being friendly and even playful. Fourth thing I'd recommend is that you must be prepared to walk away. In any negotiation, if you're not prepared to walk away, you are immediately ceding ground and immediately putting yourself in a very, very weak position with the other party. So you need to be very, very aware that you do need to give the impression, and indeed, in fact, be prepared to walk away. Number 5 is you need to get to know. That's N-O, quickly. People say that you should be getting to yes. How to get to yes in negotiations? It's easy to get to yes. You can get to yes very, very easily, but you could get a very soft yes. You could get a yes that's just going along with you in order to move the thing along and just agree with you, but that soft yes becomes a hard no. You're far better off getting to know at the outset or early on, and that way you know where the other party really stands and you know what their parameters and what the boundaries are in terms of your negotiation. Number 6, deadlines. Deadlines can be an ally, so you'll always see as deadlines approaches in any negotiations that deals, settlements tend to get done as the deadline hoves into view, because it crystallizes people's minds on the alternative of not reaching a deal. But you can use a deadline to your advantage, and as long as you don't panic and rush your fences, as it were, you can use a deadline as an ally. The 7th thing I would recommend very strongly, and I wouldn't even call it a recommendation, I'd say it's mandatory. You need to stay calm. You need to stay cool and calm, and certainly be detached. You cannot let emotion rule your negotiation. You cannot let emotion rule your decision making. You do need to stay objective and calm. It's not easy, it is difficult, but that's why being a good negotiator can be difficult. You do need to detach yourself from the situation. You do need to detach your emotions from the situation and stay calm. Number 8 is one of the most important words in a negotiation, and that is the word fair. If you say to the other party, look, all I want is what's fair, all I want is a fair deal for both of us, it immediately stirs a sort of a sense of fairness and justice that most people, the vast majority of people, have. And if you say that you're looking for what's fair, then you're positioning yourself as somebody who's reasonable and not looking to pin the other person completely to the wall, and you're not looking to take advantage, and you are simply looking for what's fair. And as I say, everybody has some sense of fairness, some sense of justice, some basic sense of what is fair, and that's something that you can use. It's one of the most important words you can use in a negotiation. You're just looking for what's fair. You're just prepared to pay the fair price. Number 9 is a question that you shouldn't ask. You should never ask why. You should always use how or what. So if somebody says, I want 200 grand for the house or 50 grand for the car, you don't say why. What you say is, how am I going to manage that? Or how am I supposed to get that sort of money? Because that way, what happens is the other person, in order to try to move the thing along and assist you, may actually come up with further suggestions as to how you can do it, and may even bid against themselves to a certain extent in reducing the asking price. So don't ask why, ask how. How am I going to manage that? How am I going to get 17 grand for a second-hand car when the credit union will only give me 12? Or how am I going to get 150 grand for that house when the bank will only approve me for 120? That way you're likely to get the other party coming back to you saying, well, what about this or what about that? The final tip, and the 10th tip of these 10 tips, which I hope you find useful, is the one that, if you remember nothing else from this video, you should remember this tip. It's a tip I've given before about negotiating, and it's a tip that I learned a long time ago from my father when he used to bring me to Dublin buying second-hand cars. He used to sit me on his knee back in the days, and I used to steer the car, take a day off primary school and go to Dublin, go to Blackrock Motors and places like that to buy second-hand cars. But one of the things that I learned, and I know it to be true because I've come across the tip again and again later years, is never offer an even number for a property or for a car or anything. Offer a sort of an unusual, non-specific, uneven number, because it's going to give you far greater credibility when you say, look, I've only got 147,000 and a half, say, for a house, rather than offering 150 grand. If you offer 150 grand, the other party, the auctioneer, knows that there's more in you. They know that that's just an offer. It's a round figure. It's clearly not your final offer. But if you offer 147,500 or 147,825, and you say to the other party, to the auctioneer, that is it, I'm absolutely flat to the mat, that is all I have, that's all I can get, I have scraped and I have tapped friends and relations and so on, and I can't go any further, then you're really going to give the impression that you are absolutely balls to the wall, flat to the mat with your offer, and that's it. It's the same as going and buying a car, and the car is 9 grand, and you go along and you have 8,147 euros. And you say to your man, look, I've cash, but I can't give you 9. I can give you 8,147. I'm after getting a few bob from friends and relations and so on, and here you are, I have it now. That guy is going to accept that you are absolutely at your limit with the 8,147. So I hope you get what I'm saying in terms of a specific, uneven number, which will give the impression that it is indeed your absolute max. You simply cannot give any more. And to bring the analogy or the example even further, if you were a kid and you went into a shop back in the days when you were buying penny sweets, and you wanted 20 penny sweets, and you went into the shopkeeper and said, I want 20 penny sweets, and you put out your money on the counter and you've only got 16, what's the shopkeeper going to do? He's probably going to give you the 20 penny sweets for the 16 pennies that you have, even though you might have 20 pence, you might have 30 pence or 50 pence in your pocket. But the point is that if you say to somebody, look, this is my final offer, and you say it's an offer of 200 grand or 250 grand, they're not going to believe you. They're not going to believe you, because that's a nice round number, and they assume that there's still another little bit in you, and so they won't take your 200 grand. They'll come back to you and they'll be expecting another bite of the cherry from you. So uneven, non-specific or specific, non-even number, an unusual number, and you're saying to them, look, this is my absolute limit. I've done everything I can. I've scraped and I've tapped friends and relations and family and so on and so forth, and this is the very best I can do. I'm out of here if you don't accept this. Hope you find this video useful. Negotiating is important in any walk of life, and I hope you find these tips beneficial. But if you remember any two, if you summarize the 10 down to 2, I would say A, be prepared to walk away, and B, your final bid is going to be an uneven, very specific, very exact, odd number. Hope you find it useful. As I say, give it a thumbs up down below if you do, and you may be interested in subscribing to my YouTube channel. And if you do, you'll be stuck with me for life. The only way that you'll be able to unsubscribe is if one of us passes away. No, that's not really the case.